Good afternoon. Welcome to this extraordinary meeting of the Subject and Overview and Scrutiny Committee 3, which is being convened as a hybrid meeting. The meeting is being recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed subsequently. Everyone participating in the meeting will be accessing it either from the Council Chamber, Civic Offices, Angel Street, Bridgend, or from remote locations. Should I, as Chair, experience any technical difficulties during the meeting, Councillor Colin Davis will step in and take over as temporary Chair in my absence. And in his absence, Councillor Graham Walter will step in. Please can everyone ensure that mobile phones are switched off or switched to silent mode. Members will have received an electronic copy of the agenda, and I will ask officers to present a summary of the key points. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the Council's website. Officers and members are reminded to refer to the page numbers contained in the public version of the agenda report pack. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch their cameras on at that point. But I would ask that, with the exception of myself as chairperson, at all other times you keep your microphones switched off, as this will help to minimise any background noise and interference. However, as a trial measure, I would invite members and officers to leave their cameras on for the duration of the meeting. Whether attending in the chamber or remotely, if any member and officer wish to raise a point or question, they should click the raise hand icon at the top right hand side of the Microsoft Teams window, and will come to you in the order I receive requests. If you're in the chamber, please switch on the microphone on your desk and speak directly into the mic to allow those who are remote to hear you clearly. Please lower your hand once you have finished speaking. The instant messaging chat button has been disabled for this meeting. Please do not use your microphone until invited to do so. Officers from Scrutiny and Legal will be supporting the meeting, and we will be monitoring the use of microphones throughout its duration, and when necessary, we'll mute those not being used. I will ask officers to introduce themselves when I invite them to speak during the course of the meeting. They too should ensure microphones are switched off when not in use. I will now proceed to the agenda. Are there any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies for absence from Councillor Nora Clark. Thank you.
I don't see any other indications. Okay. And we move on to item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest, please? Glasses, I think. Councillor Jonathan Pratt, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, personal, as a member of the Development Control Committee, if this meeting does start discussing the planning application, I will make it a prejudicial issue and prejudicial interest, sorry, and leave the meeting.
For what reason?
As a member of the Development Control Committee. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Councillor Melanie Evans, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I need to declare a personal interest as I am a rep on the Board of Conservators for Coity Walia. Again, like Councillor Pratt, should it go into conversation, goes down the route of planning, I will possibly declare the prejudicial interest and leave accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor William Kendall, please.
Yeah, I am also a member of the Development Control Committee, and I will do likewise as stated by the other councillors.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mike Kern, please.
Yes, the same reason as my fellow councillor says, as I'm a member of the Development Control Committee. If we should go down planning, I will also leave the meeting.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any more indications, so we'll assume that's all the declaration of interest. I'm going to move on to item 3, the calling of the Cabinet decision, High Bond Project Gateway Review. Just to be clear now in the meeting, this is only to look at the meeting of the decision of the Cabinet, which was held in, what was the date, Laura? In September?
19th.
On the 19th of September. Okay, I'll now hand you over to Meryl to go through the report. Meryl, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to enable the committee to consider the decision of Cabinet on the 19th of September 2023 in relation to the report on Habont Project Gateway Review. In accordance with section 7.23 of the Council's Constitution, which states that 3 members of overviewing scrutiny committees and a scrutiny chair are needed for a decision to be called in. A notice of call-in has been received from 4 scrutiny members and a scrutiny chair, requesting that the executive decision made by Cabinet on the 19th of September be called in. The Cabinet decision record, notice of call-in and Cabinet report are appended to the report. The role of scrutiny committees in calling in a decision is to test the merits of the decision, to consider the process by which the decision has been formulated, to make recommendations to support the decision, change aspects of the decision, or to invite the decision-making person or body to reconsider, to suggest further steps before a decision is made, but not to try to carry out those steps in place of the decision-making person or body, to come to a view in a relatively short timescale so as not to compromise the speed and efficiency of the decision-making process. In the recommendation in paragraph 9, the committee is asked to consider the Cabinet decision of 19th September 2023 relating to Hebont Project Gateway Review and to determine whether it wishes to either refer the decision back to Cabinet for reconsideration, setting out in writing the nature of its concerns, or decide not to refer the matter back to Cabinet. I'll hand back to you now, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before I bring in the members who supported the call-in to speak, I'm going to just read out the members of the committee and who's here today, so we're all clear, because there's more confusing today, because there's a lot of councillors in the room but not on the committee. There's people who supported the call-in who are not on the committee, and there are members who are on the committee, so I'll read them out. These are the members of the SOC who are in attendance. This is online or in the building. Either way, you're in attendance. Councillor Stephen Bledsoe, Councillor Nora Clark, which she's given her apologies today. Councillor Colin Davis, Councillor Paul Davis, myself, Chairperson, Councillor Melly Evans, Councillor Phil Jenkins, Councillor Mike Kern, Councillor William Kendall, Councillor Jonathan Pratt, Councillor Graham Walter, Councillor Ian William, who supported the call-in, Councillor Martin Williams, who also supported the call-in. Those are the members of the committee of SOC3. The non-members of SOC3 who supported the call-in and are here today is Councillor Freya Bledsoe. She's the scrutiny chair who I believe signed the call-in. Councillor Ian Spiller and Councillor Tim Thomas. There's some observers here today. Alex Williams, I've got down remotely. Councillor Martin Jones was supposed to be in the chamber. I don't see him here. Councillor Richard Collins. There's members of the public I noticed, which is nice to see, up in the gallery there. So, okay, I'm now going to ask members who supported the notice of call-in. Laura wants to come in quickly. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. For the purposes of the recording, my name is Laura Griffiths and I'm the Group Manager of Legal and Democratic Services. Before we start today's meeting, it's just to remind members that today we can only look at the decision that was made by Cabinet at its September meeting. So we shouldn't really become embroiled in speculative debate. So just to remind members of that. So we're purely looking at the decision that was made by Cabinet on the 19th of September. Also, the reasons for calling in the decision, those are within the pack and they are in the call-in notice. So at today's meeting, members cannot raise any new information or any new reasons for calling in the decision. So just to be clear on that, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will ask the members who supported the notice of call-in to briefly speak on their reasons why the decision has been called in, noting that the reasons are set out in the report Appendix B. Do anybody, any particular order? Would someone like to go first?
Chair, can we just remind members we trial in keeping the cameras on as well, please?
Yeah, well, I did say that, didn't I? We are trialing keeping the cameras on if you want to knock them on, people. Change of glasses. Councillor Timothy Thomas, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to say, firstly, for the public record, I intend to write to the leader regarding an issue relating to the MOU. But moving that aside, quite rightly for the time being, I just wonder if the leader or the cabinet member or an officer could help me understand what due diligence is usually adhered to for a project of this magnitude, and is the leader satisfied that this due diligence?
Tim, this is not the time to ask questions. It's the time to give your statement, and you can ask that question
Oh, right,
later.
pardon.
That's the way. I've been advised by the legal officer.
No, I
She wants to come in again, Tim. Sorry.
Chair, just for clarification for the rest of the committee and officers. So members who called in the decision and are not members of the committee, they are entitled to provide their reasons for why they actually called in the decision. The Constitution does allow us to relax the overview and scrutiny procedure rules in relation to allowing, general debate and for full contribution. So at the chair's discretion, he may allow questions of those that are non-members of the committee, but then they can't take any role in the debate or the actual decision. So at the moment, Councillor Thomas, we're just looking at the reasons why you have requested this call in. Thank you.
thanks.
Tim, please.
Sorry, it's a bit noisy. The reason why I called this in is because a lack of clarity over the due diligence, over the financial handling of the project. That's the main reason for me and lacking detail in some of the questioning as well. But for me, that was the primary reason for calling it in. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Councillor Freya Bledsoe, please.
Thank you, Chair. There's a couple of reasons why I've been the chair signatory on this. One of them is that I think when it came to Cabinet, there was very much a lack of professional curiosity in the questioning that we saw there. And I'm concerned about that because in my own committee, we have had external reports that have come to us from CIW that have noted that this council does have a lack of professional curiosity when it comes to important issues. So I think we need to start as a council body, and certainly the Cabinet as the executive authority in the council needs to take on board that we need to be looking at items with a bit more of a scrutinising eye and not letting items just pass through Cabinet. So there was that issue for myself. And there's also the financial implications. Sorry, I think somebody's got their mic open. So there's the financial implications. Sorry, I don't know who's got their mic open.
Here?
No, that's fine. That's not a problem. It happens. So it's the financial implications for the authority, because as we're told repeatedly in this authority, we are in dire straits. There's no two ways about it. So I feel that there needs to be more clarity around the financial implications, and that's another reason why I've called this in. But I'll leave it for the rest of my partners on the call in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Martin Williams, please.
Thank you, Chair. And if I may, I'll just précis the call-in document and sort of highlight the things that concerned me. I mean, as my colleagues have already said, there was definitely, to my mind, a lack of professional curiosity amongst the Cabinet. I didn't witness any questioning of the paper at all. There was a procession of statements which supported the paper, but I didn't see any questioning of that, which implies perhaps to the observer that there was a predetermination in this case. It's more surprising that there was no questioning of this paper, because some of the financial information appeared quite confused. We had a lot of talk about increased costs, or increasing costs, but no indication of what those costs were originally meant to be. And also no indication of what the original return on investment was intended to be or anticipated to be versus what it is today. The other confusion that I saw in the paper was an apparent conflation of capital costs. So we, as far as I could see, have 4 elements in there. We have the capital cost of the plant itself. We have the capital cost of the heat network. We have the revenue elements, we include in the JV co, and the future fleet replacement. Well, is the future fleet replacement one and the same as the project? Would we not have to replace the fleet at some future point? So those questions seemed obvious to me, but they weren't asked. And of course, what changed? What changed from the original memorandum of understanding, and when did those changes occur? My other, and it's quite a big element of the calling documents, is how we reconcile our brand new sparkling net zero 2030 strategy with a decision made in this cabinet meeting. We are told, and I look back at the calling back in January, that the net zero strategy is overarching, and it is a golden thread through every decision we made. But it isn't clear at all how net zero considerations were considered when the value judgments were made that this was in fact too expensive. So I would really like to explore how net zero was factored into these deliberations. And yeah, and of course the other thing what I'd just like to summarize again is there are 4 elements to this. You've got the heating network, you've got the future plant, the future fleet, you've got the JV co, and you've got the plant itself. What exactly are we withdrawing from? Is it all of it? Is it part of it? We need to understand. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Spiller, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm going to end up reiterating points that my fellow call-in members have already stated, but for me, there was very little to no questioning of these decisions, and you know, we hear an awful lot about how we as a council are going to face some very, very difficult times on our budget setting. Ultimately, we as a local authority have to invest in capital projects that are going to return revenue. If we don't, then these budgets are going to become more and more constrained over the years. And for me, this is all about, or for me, largely about return on investment. What was the return on investment originally when the MOU was signed? And how did this change? We've heard about costs increase, but we've heard nothing about whether the return on investment depleted or whether it was actually going to grow. There was no questioning around that, which is unsatisfactory in my opinion. But also there does become the point that Councillor Williams just stated with regards to the fleet replacement. We have an ageing fleet. We know it's got to be replaced. I don't understand why this was put in as a reason. You know, it does seem to be confusing the matters entirely. And my third point is around net zero. It's an overarching strategy of the council. We've been told on numerous occasions that you can't put a price on net zero, yet we appear to be putting a price on net zero and saying, this isn't viable. So when did it become not viable, and when would it have been viable? If it had been a couple of pounds less, would it have been? And this is really the understanding that I would have expected Cabinet to have gone through, really to get a very, very clear understanding of whether this project was viable partly or whether it needed to be scrapped. But unfortunately, with the information given, I don't see that that's taken place. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Spiller. Councillor Ian Williams, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think I'll be going over what other councillors have already said. In my opinion, there was no constructive questioning of the decision to withdraw. I think there was only 2 questions asked when the decision was made, and they both related to planning. There was no questions regarding what was contained in the Memorandum of Understanding, so I expect all Cabinet members to know exactly what was in there. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, well, that's the 5 signatories have all a chance to speak. I'm going to ask the Cabinet members to outline the reasons for the decision in response to the reasons given in the notice of the call-in, and then entered in the invitation to the Corporate Director, other officers, to also respond. Please. John?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the questions and some of the reasons outlined by various members just now. I'd just like to first point out to the actual report, 19th September 23, they went to Cabinet. The executive summary says Significant financial resources, both capital and revenue, are required in the current and future financial years to complete due diligence activities and produce a business case to enable BCBC to assess that the project is viable and will deliver the benefits identified. The decision Cabinet took, we were looking at the finances, and that was finance required to continue the due diligence and to continue what was agreed in the memorandum of understanding to see whether this project, as a demonstrator project, was one for us to continue with. So the decision was taken on financial grounds, not the project. The project could well still continue, but not with us financially as partners, because we do not, the decision was taken, we don't have the finances with all the other demands at the moment, and that's purely what the report was on, and that's purely what the decision was taken on finances. And while who knows what the project will turn out to be in the future, it could still continue, because we've not, the report didn't say anything about pulling the project. The report made it quite clear, I think, the project could well continue with other partners. For us, the financial stake we had, we were not in a position to continue the due diligence to see whether or not we would be a future partner. So we have withdrawn on financial grounds and financial grounds only.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Spanswick. Janine, would you like to come in at this point? Howard?
Yeah, I'm happy to make remarks, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee here this afternoon. I think as a general point, I think the report that was put before us on the in September was a detailed report. There was a 20-minute introduction by the corporate director, and I think there was sufficient information within that report for us to make our decision. The MOU report wasn't a part of the discussions, because that was approved in June 22, and I was happy that the due diligence that we were seeking would have become available, but we were presented with a report that needed more finance to complete that due diligence. And that was the whole question, really, is whether we could afford the extra finance to complete the due diligence. It was our decision, and you know, I'm sure everyone has played back the recording of the report. There were higher priorities for the council, so the decision was taken to not proceed at that point. Now, this doesn't mean that the project is finished. It just means that our involvement with it is paused. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Janine?
Yes, thank you, Chair. For the purposes of the recording, I'm Janine Nightingale, the Corporate Director for Communities.
Thank you.
If you would let me, Chair, I think I've written down quite a few things today, and maybe I can try and go through and provide some assurances and add to what my the two Cabinet members have said today. I think what we need to understand is when we signed that Memorandum of Understanding, there was a Cabinet report on the 14th of June 2022, which actually was referred as a background paper in September's report. Now, that Memorandum of Understanding set out how BCBC would work alongside Marubeni Europower, work alongside Welsh Government, and work alongside partners at CCR to look at what the project could deliver in terms of green hydrogen, to look at what the benefits could be, and to look at what the cost of that would be. This was just a concept when it was introduced to Bridgend. It wasn't a designed project, it was a concept that they would like to produce green hydrogen, and how could Bridgend be an off-taker of that green hydrogen. So when the Memorandum of Understanding was signed, there was no detailed business case that went with it. It was to work together on this innovative green project. So at that point, really, and set out in section 8 of that Cabinet report are the financial implications. In 8.1, 8, 2, 3, 4, in that report last June, it does set out that at the moment, we're not aware of the full financial cost of this, but what is clear is that Bridgend had a very small revenue allocation to start undertaking due diligence, but did not have any capital available for this project, but that it wanted to continue to explore what the project could achieve. So what we have done over the last couple of years is we've acted on that MOU. We have spent money financially on due diligence. And going back to Councillor Spiller's question, we did three types of due diligence we had to do. The first was financial due diligence. We started looking at how much these things could cost, but until they were designed, it was very difficult to know the full extent of that. We looked at legal due diligence, and legal due diligence, you can't share the costs of that. As a local authority, any legal advice that we get is solely just for us as an authority. So what was very clear we had to do was to work with our legal colleagues as well as external legals to look at what would it mean for us to get into a partnership agreement. Would we have to be, if we were an off-taker of the hydrogen, with the prices guaranteed for it, etc., etc., etc. Now that work is still going on with the legal due diligence, and that's what we've stopped because we need more money to complete that. And the third bit of the due diligence was based on the technical due diligence. For instance, just coming back to a point, we are currently using diesel refuse collection vehicles, although recently we have converted them to hydrogenated vegetable oil. So in our capital programme is monies to cover off the replacement of that fleet in 2026. Now, to switch that fleet to ULEV, an ultra-low emission vehicle, either electric or hydrogen, would take additional monies. And that is why that is in that report. So we needed to understand the technical due diligence, how many of those trucks could operate on electric and how many would be suitable for hydrogen. So that is the work that we've been undertaking. So over the last 18 months, Marubeni, Welsh Government, CCR and ourselves have been shaping up the project. Where could it be located? Was it truly green hydrogen? Because that was really important to us. Could there be a solar farm to provide the electricity? Is there a sleeving contract? Is there green energy via a grid connection? Where was the water coming from? Where would it be located? Legal questions for ourselves, and obviously that technical due diligence. Now, what was clear, and one of the recommendations in that Cabinet report in June, was we have gateway reviews when it comes to projects of this nature. And what we said last June is when the due diligence was completed, we would come back to Cabinet and explain what the benefits were of this project and what the cost of this project was, and whether we would enter the next phase, which is a development agreement, an offtake agreement, all those legal agreements that you would expect to be put in place. Now, the MOU is the only thing we have in place. It's not legally binding. It just gives myself and my team the permission to engage and work on this project. Now, what is clear is we've come to a point where we have expended the money that was made available to us for things like legal due diligence. But what was also clear is that we have an incredibly difficult MTFS situation. So we had a meeting with colleagues at Welsh Government and colleagues at CCR, and unfortunately had to make the decision that Bridgend can no longer actively participate. We can't complete that due diligence because we would require at least another £525,000 of revenue to do that. Now, what it does say in the Cabinet report, but I think what is quite important to note today, is even if we did allocate another 525,000, it would just complete those three areas of due diligence. It would then give us the answers whether financially this is a good project, whether technically this is a good project, and whether legally we can continue. There was no certainty, even at the end of that due diligence, that those three things would answer yes. So the decision that we've made purely financially at this stage is unfortunately Bridgend can no longer contribute to complete our due diligence to be part of it. Now, Marubeni Europower and Welsh Government and CCR have decided to continue the project without us as an off-taker in the project, without us having a stake and being part of the project. So they're still working on how the project could be shaped. But what is very clear at this point in time is that this project in particular can't continue. Now, our net zero carbon strategy is completely different because we have a climate emergency and we're very committed to decarbonisation. In fact, over the last year, our decarbonisation strategy, we report back to Welsh Government annually, and over the last year, we have, bear with me, I've got it written down here, reduced our carbon, by at least 40 million tonnes of carbon. We did have 90,000 tonnes when we set our 2030 strategy, and we have reduced it by about 38%. Now, when we discussed 2030 previously, and this wasn't subject to this call-in, Chair, but I just wanted to say that 70% of our total carbon footprint comes from procurement. So we've made good inroads into this. So this project is not the main part of 2030 and our decarbonisation strategy. It never was. And our climate emergency will continue without it, and rightly so. It doesn't mean the project won't continue. It's being reshaped currently by Welsh Government, but unfortunately we just can't afford to be part of it anymore. I'd like to pick up a few other things really that I believe came from Councillor Williams and Councillor Spiller. So the reason why we didn't have a return on investment, I think I've explained. It was a concept and had to be designed up. And only when the design is complete will you have a detailed business case which will outline the investment. So at this stage, we've pulled out before we've finished that work. We have, however, learned an awful lot of information from being part of this project to date. We've made very many contacts in UK government, in networks with SWIC, which is the South Wales Industrial Cluster. We've spoken to professors in Cardiff University and Swansea University, and really it has helped our decarbonisation journey, even if we are not part of this project. So I know that we've learned an awful lot from being involved so far. So a couple of things really that I wanted to come back to. It's the conflation of the capital costs. And what are we withdrawing from was one of the questions. So if I can just answer that. The plant itself, Bridgend, was never part of constructing that plant. The plant, the hydrogen production plant, was always being funded by Welsh Government and in partnership with Marubeni Europower and CCR. That was never part of the agreement. The costs of the heat network was part of BCBC's part in the agreement, so we will no longer participate in that. So I think it's fair to say that the heat network will not continue. So that will finish. The RCVs, the refuse collection fleet, that was always a cost apportioned to BCBC because there are vehicles and we always had to find the money to finance those. We have the money for diesel, replacement diesel, in the capital programme. We don't have the uplifting costs to a ULEV, and that is where Welsh Government have said that as part of their circular economy fund, we could apply to them to uplift the cost. And just to give you an example, a normal diesel refuse collection vehicle is around about 250,000, an electric one about 400,000, and as it stands, a hydrogen 500,000. So it's twice the cost of a diesel alternative, and that, if we needed to, was what we would apply to Welsh Government for. Now, we want to move our strategy forward, and whether we are part of this project or not, we will have to make those decisions on whether hydrogen or electric is the right way ahead. But that decision doesn't go away, Chair. We still have to make that decision. And the other piece was the JV Co that's been set up. So we're no longer part of the JV Co. The bit of the JV Co that we would have contributed to was the land. The land at the Bryn Melyn Industrial Estate and the land at the clay pits would have been our contribution. It's no longer our contribution because we're no longer part of this initiative. So that land is no longer there. That doesn't mean that land won't be part of the project going forward, because Welsh Government, CCR and Marubeni may ask us about the land in the future and come forward and still want to use the land, but that is a discussion and they'll come forward as and when when they're at that stage Chair, just for you. So those are the 4 different bits. Hopefully that's a little bit clearer on the capital cost. So I'll stop there. I could go on, Chair, but I'll stop and wait for more questions.
Thank you. Jean, Carys, do you want to come in this stage?
Thank you, Chair. Just for the sake of the recording, I'm Carys Lord and I'm the Chief Officer for Finance, Performance and Change. I think, to be fair, Chair, a lot of issues have already been covered. So like the last speaker who put this forward, when you get to the end, most of it's already been said. But I think I would just stress the thing that when this started, this was very much about looking at the art of the possible, I suppose. Therefore, from a financial point of view, there was no financial plan for us to examine and to determine whether or not we didn't know the full implications for the council. As my colleague has already said, that due diligence work has been ongoing. We allocated a certain envelope of money to fund that, and we're now at the point where that money is close to being fully utilised, and we haven't yet finished the due diligence work. Since this was started, I think members have already mentioned tonight actually that the financial position for the council has changed significantly, and we are having to review the way in which we are spending our money. Therefore, at the current time, with the due diligence that we have and the finances that we have available to us, it was felt that the risks of moving on from this scheme from a financial point of view were very high.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to invite the committee now to ask questions. It actually says on here, I will now ask the committee members if they wish to speak relating to the decision of the Cabinet member and corporate director officers to press the raise hand icon, and then I'll ask them to speak in turn. I know there's lots of hands up, but before I bring anybody in, we have non-members of the committee here who signed the call-in. They've given their reasons for signing that call-in, and the standing orders or the Constitution says that it's at the discretion of the chair if I allow them to ask questions. Well, I am going to give those members some latitude and to ask questions, in fairness. That is my decision. I would like to see the committee do the bulk of the questioning, the SOC3 committee, because we are the actual committee who oversee this. But on that said, I am now going to bring in Councillor Ian Spiller, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for giving me and my fellow calling members the opportunity to ask some questions. But first of all, I guess any investment strategy carries risk. Now, I fully appreciate the financial position that this council finds itself in. I think all members do, and I think we understand that we have to be very, very conscious where we're spending our pounds. But we've spent 140,000 for a photo of the leader on this project so far. And I fully appreciate that 525,000 is an awful lot of money. But surely we should have budgeted a reasonable amount to actually undertake the due diligence to see whether this project is viable and it's actually going to give us a return on investment. Because first and foremost, you know, any investment that you invest in, you need to understand, is it worthwhile or is it not? So we've spent 140,000 on a photo. I will reiterate.
Councillor Spiller,
you know,
please.
Sorry, Chair.
You made the point twice now. You got away with it. So just if we stick to the.
I certainly will. But we're talking about. I will mention, Janine. Obviously, you mentioned about the fleet costs: £250,000 for diesel, 400,000 for electric, 500,000 for hydrogen. It's fair to say that these fleet costs are going to increase because obviously they're going to be subject to inflationary pressures as years go on. But would it not also be fair to say that we are going to roll out our diesel fleet at some point in the near future, and we will have to be looking at alternatives?
Okay, thank you. Jean, please.
Yes, thank you. Yes, of course, Councillor Spiller, that's the intention, because the RCV refuse collection fleet that we have will be life expired by 2026. So we will have to replace them. They will be 9 to 10 years old by then. End of their economic life, they will be replaced. Now, some of the points that you made, the fleet costs will increase. Actually, what we are finding is that the fleet costs of the hydrogen vehicles are, believe it or not, coming down. And the reason being it's brand new technology. There's not very many out there right now. And as more and more people are having them and they become more of a mass production unit, we are, and so Welsh Government colleagues, hoping the price of those will come down. I'm not really the best person to talk about fleet in any detail, but let me just explain. So what is in production currently is a large lorry with a chassis, and then you could put different components on the top. So you could put a waste collection on, and or things that we also need in Bridgend are skip lorries and all other very large HGV facilities. And so the market for hydrogen is opening up in that regard, because what is very clear is that electric vehicles currently are not able to cope with the very high demand and some of the topography in hilly areas. There will be a market for hydrogen, no doubt, in the UK. In fact, the government is predicting about 2040, it could be as much as half of all of the energy needs of the UK comes from a hydrogen source. That's something they want to look to increase. So it's clear hydrogen has a way. The fleet costs may decrease. I suppose the irony here of this is that we may not be part of this project anymore because we can't afford to be. But however, in the future, we may want hydrogen refuse collection vehicles. And should this plant go forward, we may become an off-taker in the future, even though we're not part of the investment. So yes, absolutely, we're committed to moving all of our corporate fleet to ultra-low emission vehicles as and when we can, and in particular this refuse collection vehicle fleet, which will be life expired by 2026. So I hope that gives you a bit more information there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ian Williams, please.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just make a point that Councillor Tim Thomas is asking if he can come speak before me because his battery is getting very low on his laptop.
Yeah, Ian, if you're happy to give way to the honourable gentleman.
Yeah, I'll give way to the Right Honourable Timothy Thomas.
Thank you. Timothy, please.
Thank you ever so much, Councillor Williams. That's very generous of you. I've got a couple of questions. Firstly, Janine says the MOU is not legally binding. If you look at point 8.2 of the MOU, it does say that it is legally binding, including costs. So could you have some clarity on that, first of all? Second question is, I might be a little bit wrong in my figures, but I think I heard that, apologies, my Wi-Fi is terrible. We've spent in the region of 150k already for this project. Can I just have clarity that is that a fair and accurate figure, and does it include staff costs as well? So, for example, salaries that have gone into this. Thirdly, I'd just be interested really what conversations and meetings have we had with Maribeni and the Welsh Government as to alternative funding models for the project to proceed as well. Has there been any update on that, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Janine? He seemed to direct him with you, didn't he?
Yeah, yes, of course, no problem at all. Yeah, the MOU isn't a legally binding document, and I think Laura will be perfect person sitting next to you, Chair, will be able to attest to that.
But I answer that part first and come back to you.
Yes, do you want, okay. If I could offer.
Please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so members, it's not a memorandum of understanding. It's not legally binding. It's almost a valuable tool for establishing common understanding, but it's not legally binding. And as Janine mentioned earlier, it's normally something that sets the scene ready, sets the stage ready for entering into more formal agreements. So no, an MOU, it's more sort of moral force rather than creating legal obligations, if that helps.
Okay, thank you. Jane?
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Points, please.
Let me take the point on the costing of the project. Yes, to date, we have spent 149 on the project, of which 105,000 was on due diligence for legal, to understand what this project would mean for us and protect the best interests of the council if we were to sign up. And that we've expended 43,000 over the last 2 years on project management. We've had a person in post to come and assist us with managing this because it was a £40 million project. So we had some staff on it and legal due diligence. An alternative funding model, well, the way that this project has always been put together is Marubeni Europower will bring in the substantial capital investment. 13 million was from NEDO, which is Japanese government to investigate new energy. And NEDO, the new energy development unit of Japanese government. And 13 million was coming from Marubeni itself. And then some of the investment was coming from Welsh Government, from CCR. We're going to take a stake in it. And as I said, our investment from BCBC was purely in terms of our land contribution to the deal. So we, the name that we had for Welsh Government, CCR and BCBC was Team Wales, because it was the three Welsh partners coming together. So when we had a difficult situation where we knew that the allocation that we had would enable us to complete the technical, legal or financial due diligence, we had a conversation with Team Wales, with Welsh Government and CCR. Now, of course, Welsh Government are in no better financial situation than ourselves, Chair. That's an incredibly difficult situation for those. And also CCR have not revenue rich, they have capital which they invest. So they weren't in a situation. In fact, it was never discussed could they assist us in this regard. This was a decision for us to make. And what's clear is back in that Cabinet report back in June 22, we set that out, that this was going to be a big ask for Bridgend, because at that stage it was not quite clear how much of an ask it would be in terms of revenue for the due diligence, because we didn't know the shape and size of the project at that time. So alternative funding models, we spoke to our partners. It's very clear because of the difficulties we're facing currently that this project it is not prioritised for any other resources, but that Welsh Government, CCR and Marubeni are now reshaping it to see whether it can continue without us being an off-taker. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thomas, I'm going to bring you back in very quickly because your phone is going flat. I think it does run out. Do you want to come back in on anything very quickly, please? Is he gone, is he? Yeah, I think we've lost Councillor Thomas. Councillor Ian Williams, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. With all due respect to Janine, we are here to scrutinise the Cabinet decision, not her knowledge of what she knows. So I would like to ask Councillor John Spanswick, you've given, or you agreed to give delegated authority to the 151 officer and the Cabinet member for communities to withdraw from the MOU. What exactly did you give them the authority to withdraw from? What was the financial understanding of the Memorandum of Understanding? And if there was any land included in this memorandum, what was the value, the commercial value of the land which was being gifted?
Okay, finish it. Yeah. Councillor Spanswick, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start at the end bit. I got no intention of discussing the land because we're not taking any decision about the land. That wasn't part of any Cabinet report. Wasn't part of the Cabinet report that's been scrutinised today and been called in on the subject of the finances. The decision that was taken based on the advice and the report from officers was that we needed more finance to continue the due diligence, whether that's legal, technical, or financial. And we decided at that point as Cabinet that with all the other priorities that there wasn't the money to continue with the due diligence to progress through the memorandum of understanding to get to the next stage. So I don't know what's so difficult to understand about that. We made that decision. There were £500,000 or more was needed, and we thought that would not be wise investment to continue with all the other priorities we have at this current time in this county borough.
Anybody else with me? No? Okay. Ian?
With all due respect, Councillor Spanswick, you've given authority, delegated authority to two members, senior members of the staff of this authority to withdraw from a memorandum of understanding. What was within that memorandum of understanding that you've given them the delegated authority to withdraw from?
I thought that had been explained by the legal officer earlier. It was. What is it exactly in this memorandum of understanding?
Does Councillor Spanswick understand what was in the memorandum, or has he just not asked any questions? Because there were two questions asked in the whole of that decision. They were asked by Councillor Neil O'Farr, and they were regarding planning. Nobody has disputed anything else.
Chair, the memorandum of understanding, as was explained earlier, was more almost it's an agreement how we work together, working forward. On the basis that we didn't have the finances and agreed that it wouldn't be wise to put further finances in over and above the 149,000 already been spent. It speaks for itself that we wouldn't be progressing the memorandum of understanding or progressing the project any further because we decided not to invest further money in the due diligence. So I don't know. If you can explain it any differently, I'll try and give a different answer. But it's pretty straightforward to me.
It's a bit confusing, this memorandum of understanding. Even to me, I don't really know what. I don't know legal. I don't understand it. So, but the decision has been made apparently. So we can't, Which the decision of what decision is referring to, Laura? Sorry, it's illegal.
So, members, obviously the memorandum of understanding that was taken to Cabinet last June. So obviously we can't scrutinise anything in relation to that MOU. Councillor Williams.
Okay.
Chair, but surely when people make a decision to give delegated authority to two individuals to make a withdrawal from this memorandum of understanding, they should understand completely, or we should, what we're withdrawing from.
We don't really. No one seems to know the answer, Ian, I'm afraid.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Nobody seems to know the answer.
Janine's going to give it a shot, and we'll have to move on from that. Sorry? Do you want a quick... Okay, thank you.
It's not nobody knows. Somebody's not listening to the answer.
Okay. Councillor Stephen Bledsow's next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You will note I'm not one of the names on the sign-in. So
You're a member of the committee, though.
I am, absolutely, thank you. And just for the public record, I'm not here to make any decisions on whether the decision to put a hydrogen plant in the proposed location is right or wrong, or who signed the memorandum of understanding, on what terms, or anything else.
That's right.
And I'd also like to actually pay credit to Janine. I read the report and I watched the recording, and I have to say that it's a well-written report and it was a very good presentation to Cabinet. So thank you, Janine. But on that basis, I actually believe that the report was well enough written that it generated a few questions. So I would like to ask, I don't know why we only have two Cabinet members here. Obviously, it wasn't just the two Cabinet members that we have. There were more Cabinet members and the leader. Did genuinely this report and this presentation not stimulate any questions to put to officers? Because all I saw was people saying, we can't afford to do this, we can't afford to do this. But I've gone through the report and I found quite a lot of questions that I feel that this local authority should have asked and should have had answered on the basis and in the back of a well-written report, because I think good reports stimulate questions. So I'd like to know, did that report and that presentation genuinely not stimulate questions?
You direct that to the two...
Could I raise a point of order, Chair?
To the two Cabinet members, please.
Who's that, sorry?
Chair, could I raise a point of order?
Who's this now, sorry?
Councillor Good.
Oh, yeah, carry on, Councillor Good. Yeah.
Sorry, Chair. I just want to make clear that, for clarity, only two Cabinet members were invited to take part in this committee meeting, so other Cabinet members weren't invited to be part of it. So,
okay.
And plenty of cabinet members are attending online, I might add, but we aren't actually part of this meeting because we weren't invited by the committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for clarifying that, Councillor Good. Yeah, sorry, I missed you. Sorry, was that sorry? You Williams? Or?
I don't think him not having an invite is a point of order.
There's no point of order in scrutiny meetings, apparently. So he's come in, he's made the point, so we know now why the cabinet members aren't here. So, Councillor Betts, we want.
Can I just clarify then? I wasn't aware that Councillor Good was on the meeting. I wasn't aware who was invited. My point was to the two cabinet members who were in front of me. Thank you.
It was an error. Fair enough. So we still waiting for anybody want to come in from the cabinet members who are actually present in the meeting? Yeah, go John.
Yeah, I mean, you're correct in some ways saying that there's more questions can be asked in any cabinet meeting, in any report. And it'd be crazy to suggest that the whole topic and the whole agenda hadn't been discussed for some time before the report is produced. That the cabinet meeting is the culmination of work that goes on, whether that's through cabinet meetings, meetings with officers. That's part and parcel of the executive function of the council. We can't just say nothing, talk to nobody, and then we do it all in one meeting, one cabinet meeting, one cabinet report. There's a lot of discussion. And yeah, I'll admit that maybe there could have been more questions asked. But you can argue that with any report. That still doesn't.
Councillor Bledsoe?
Sorry, with respect, I don't want to interrupt, but as a chair of scrutiny as well, are we not hearing a cabinet member here admitting to predetermination? I would call a point of order on that, but obviously we can't have them. But I'm a bit concerned about this.
I'm not a legal officer.
I know Councillor Best is looking for any little word to pick on. It's not predetermination. It's the very thing that was accused of earlier was lack of professional curiosity. Right. But a lot of that goes on day in, day out at the Executive Council with officers within the cabinet to decide the way forward. That's you can't just run a multi-million pound business on one report and one meeting.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's just unbelievable some of the accusation made. There's no predetermination. It's educated and informed decisions are made in at cabinet meetings.
Okay, thank you, John. Howell, please.
Just to support, I suppose, what Councillor Spanswick said there. No, this was the first sighting of the report for us at that afternoon of the 19th. I mean, no, the report is produced. It's in draft form. We have conversations and meetings with corporate directors, and therefore, and the result of those discussions, that's what finalises the final report. That's just the way that local government operates, Chair. But for me, it was a very simple gateway review on the financial commitment needed from this authority to take it forward to the next step. It wasn't about the merits of the proposal. It was simply about a financial support to take this forward to the next step and understand fully the due diligence that we needed to be able to take a final decision. So it was a relatively simple decision because we had a report earlier in our cabinet meeting requesting a £3.5 million investment in social services. There was £1 million wired from central corporate resources. There was a £2.5 million drawdown from corporate reserves, which will go forward to the budget pressures for next year. So the financial arguments I felt were compelling, and that is why I supported the report.
So the
officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Chair, and I thank both cabinet members in attendance in the chamber for their honesty in that. I'm a little bit disappointed by that because I believe we are duty bound to have these conversations in public so that the residents that we serve can be aware of the decisions that are made. Whilst I'm not naive enough to know that not everything can be discussed in public, to have the conversations before the meeting with officers. So to come to the meeting kind of knowing where you're going to go, we don't serve the public well in that respect. So whether that's me being naive or me not understanding how corporate functions work, but we can see that there are members of the public in our public gallery. And these conversations, because they do affect our residents, should be being held in public. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'm sure that the cabinet members have taken that on board, Councillor Bledsoe. Thank you. Councillor Martin Williams, please.
Thank you, Chair. I started making notes because I had a clear line of questioning, and then it kind of went went a bit awry.
I don't think it was in the pre-meeting. I did that. We've got to keep it narrow, Councillor Williams, okay?
Thank you, Chair.
We don't want...
I mean, in seeking to clarify the situation, our contributors have only managed to confuse me further, I'm afraid, which isn't difficult, I know. But let's take the RCV fleet, if that's the right acronym, the bin lorries of the future. Let's call them bin lorries of the future, yeah? So they were referenced in the report because it was, well, for whatever reason, that the director said. But then we heard that there is a grant available from Welsh Government, which if successful will effectively make any extra overfunded. So in reality, there is no extra over because the Welsh Government will want us to use ULEZ, and if there's funding available, it will neutralise that. The heat network doesn't stack up, presumably, so we're not going to progress with that. And there you go. So that takes that away. So what we're left with is the special purpose company or the JV company, and that is considered to be attractive enough that a multinational company wants to continue with it, CCR want to continue with it, and Welsh Government want to continue with it at this point. But it's too rich for us. That's what the report says. If they want to continue with this, then it really does suggest that there's something in it commercially. Marubeni aren't in it for, they're not a charity, are they? And so they'll be investing in this and seeking to continue this because they think there's a good return in it. Now, as I understand it, unless I'm wrong, we take away the capital costs because we've talked about bin lorries of the future, which that's my phrase, by the way, Chair. If I hear anyone else saying it, there'll be trouble. So bin lorries of the future, heat network. There's the capital cost. What are we left with? What is our actual contribution, or that we were being asked to contribute to this JV company, or the JV company? It was land, which we already own, so effectively free. Yeah, we already own it. We contribute that. And as I understand this report, £500,000 of revenue. So what we're actually doing is turning down this wonderful opportunity for the sake of £500,000. This is a £400 million organisation. Is that my understanding of it? Because those capital figures don't figure. It's actually about the project which Marubeni, Welsh Government, CCR consider to be a goer, but for £500,000 and the contribution of land which we already own, we're saying no, and that's what concerns me. That on the face of it, it's quite a small investment for potentially something really good, and if I can add to that, if it's too much for us. And given our strategic location on the M4, why have we not reached out to NPT or to the Vale or for RCT? Because we're then talking about 125,000 each. Before you know it, we're collectively investing quite modest sums in what could be a big deal, and I don't understand that.
You are just slightly wide of the mark, I think, Martin. We can off. I get
Sorry,
your point.
but essentially my point is, when you take away the capital sums, which are for other things, the core project, on the face of it, looks like a good deal.
Can we let Janine answer that?
Thank
Martin?
you.
Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. The broadening out to Neath Talbot and to RCT, I think we're starting to go a little bit off piece there, I think. So,
well, I've got a short answer for that. CCR are doing that work. So we're no longer part of this project, remember? Right. Subject to this call in, of course. The heat network, we can't afford the capital for the heat network, but we haven't finished the due diligence. We can't determine whether that was a good scheme or not because the due diligence isn't completed on it. The ULEZ vehicles, the Circular Economy Fund from Welsh Government currently only fund an uplift to electric. So there is a gap from electric to hydrogen, so there is a gap there. I'm not going to comment on the land because I don't know whether the land will be part of any agreement going forward. Currently, it was going to be our stake. Councillor Williams is correct there. And also, the important bit about this report was in the report back in June of 2022, one of the recommendations was we complete the due diligence and get to the next gateway review and then decide whether we go forward again. So this 525 of revenue to complete the due diligence is just to get us to that gateway. I'm not going to assume anything here, Chair, but I think it's clear that there probably would be a revenue implication after that of a project of this magnitude going forward. And what is clear, I'm afraid, is the MTFS that we have in Bridgend won't let us be part of that going forward. So I'm afraid it's significantly more than £500,000 going forward now as our commitment. And I think whilst I've spent 2.5 years working on this project, so you could imagine, I am disappointed, but I realise that we can't continue in that respect. Now, Welsh Government and CCR, Welsh Government have a very different mandate to us about decarbonising the nation, and CCR have a much larger investment programme. And currently the Minister is keen and they want to explore the future of this project, but it will be, I'm afraid, without Bridgend at this stage. So I don't know whether that does assist Councillor Williams.
Do you want to assist you, Councillor Williams? Make it a bit clearer for you?
Not really, Chair, but it's not through any fault of the corporate director. I think we've just got a very complex situation here, and I can't make head or tail of it. And it just seems that we don't have what is our anticipated return on investment, and we must have some indication of that, and we simply don't. Well, we just don't seem to have any idea what we may or may not get out of this.
We'll let the director. Sorry. I think that's going into the speculation field, which is I don't think we're allowed to. Ginny's got a finger on the button, mind you, wants to come in. Janine,
yeah,
careful what you're saying in our mind, right? The legal have said you're not allowed to, we don't want to drift into speculation.
No. All I'm going to say is we haven't completed the due diligence, so I can't tell you what the return on investment will be because we haven't completed that work because we can't afford to complete that work.
Okay.
So I'm afraid I can't tell you what that will be.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Spandrick, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps I should raise my hand on the screen.
Yeah, you dropped at the bottom. That's any problem, John.
Okay. Sorry, no, I haven't done that.
If you are here to answer questions, so you can come in.
Yeah, just to follow on from the question, and it's a valid point. Personally, hydrogen, I think, is part. It is part of the future, whether we like it or not. There's lots of debate about hydrogen, but it's already happening across the world in various parts. And only this weekend there was a large articulated lorry done a 1,070 odd kilometres on one tank of fuel, filled up in a few minutes. So it's part of the future, and it's good to hear that maybe Councillor Martin Williams and other members of the Bridgend County Independence Party, especially Councillor Tim Thomas, who signed the calling, would like us to look at this further. And maybe that is an option, but if £500,000 can be found, because the £500,000 is only to get to the stage of the due diligence, and then it may be further. It's not just why haven't we spent £500,000. We need to spend £500,000 to know whether we go to the next stage or not. So there's a lot more than £500,000, but it is comforting to hear that Councillor Martin Williams and colleagues are supportive of this type of project proceeding in the future.
Okay,
that's welcome.
Councillor Pratt, please. You've waited a long time there.
No worries. Yeah, thank you, Chair. No, a lot of my questions have been asked by previous speakers, so hopefully I can. Yeah, no. I had all these questions, and then they've all sort of flooded towards me. But
as long as they ask us, all matters. At the end of the day, it's not,
it is difficult. I mean, no one either in the private sector or in the public sector, anyone worth their salt jumps into a project blind. You have to do your due diligence. You have to look at things. It's in return on investment, it's always an interesting concept. We could sit here in a couple of years' time going, we were right. This was a disastrous project. It looked good on paper, but in reality, it's turned into a nightmare. What a great idea of pulling out when we did. We've only lost so many, £180,000. We did well. Or it could be a massive success, and we're all sitting here scratching our heads, going, why didn't we go forward? So but these are all speculative things. I've been doing some research on this since this got called in, and it's in the public domain. But on the 22nd of August, a meeting between all the partners were held at Cathays Park on the 24th of August 2022, There was obviously a concern there about capital expenditure, and I think it was Marubini who asked whether the Welsh Government would be willing to assist. But point 11 on page 4, I'll appreciate none of the members.
Nobody's, just to clarity, nobody's seen
yes,
this.
no, it's, but
I did mention to Councillor Pratt in the pre-meeting, he's mentioned in this document, Janine, a meeting, apparently you, yeah, I know, nobody's seen it, I did tell him that, but there's a question to come at the end, it's just, he's just using it as a sort of leading up to a question, so I'm allowing it at this point, but carry on, Councillor Pratt.
No, I just, it's you know, so they you know, speculative intentions on what would be inputs and outputs for BCBC. So, I mean, looking at the RCVs, you know, that was something that was discussed then, you know, so for the, you know, if we're looking at £500,000 for one RCV hydrogen, and I appreciate the point that this technology is becoming more commonplace and refined, so, you know, costs are coming down. For the sake of a price of one, we could be getting 6. The heat plant, according to this, would assist in the heating of public buildings. So you could take that cost away because that would have happened. You know, so it's not you know, it's not necessarily looking at you know, what we can get out of it profit-wise, but what, you know, what are the cost benefits long term of our initial investment? You know, it's not looking short term, it's looking 50 years ahead. You know, these public buildings are now going to be heated by hydrogen over 50 years.
Right.
We're going to save all this money because we're a partner in that project. We're not a partner in that project, well, there'll be a customer in that project if that goes ahead. You know, we will be buying these RCVs. This is going to cost us money. Right. You know, so it's the short-termism versus long. So the question I'm asking is, obviously we're in this financial situation that we are. Yeah. At what point did BCBC, or have they at all, gone to the partners and go in, we're up a creek without a paddle, can we renegotiate our terms, can you help us out, we will help out again in the future?
The only problem with this question is nothing to do...
Or was this literally an option A and B that BCBC have decided to pull out alone?
So you're talking about in the report now that was discussed on the 19th
Yes,
September.
so it's option A and B. Where's option C? Where's option D?
Was there any
Where's
other
option E?
Right.
Yeah.
So you can sneak that one in, I think, Janine. He's asking, why didn't you basically, when you had the two options before you, ask, you know, is there any other options? Did you, you know, explore what he says with, you know, partners, for additional funding, etc., etc.?
Yeah,
I think you get the gist of it.
I might have answered this in a way earlier. But however, I think the meeting that Councillor Pratt is referring to is the meeting with the Minister at Welsh Government, was it?
Cathays Park.
Cathays Park, yeah. But we had a meeting with the Minister down there to reaffirm if Welsh Government were committed to the project. Mm-hmm. So I'm afraid I haven't seen the minutes of that meeting, and it was a year and a half ago. But what I will say is, as and when we were undertaking the due diligence, it was clear that we needed to do additional work, and it was clear we didn't have the revenue.
But I think what Councillor Pratt's asking is, when you sort of this became obvious to you, did you approach any of these other partners?
Yeah, of course. We meet with them regularly. Yeah. We meet with Welsh Government regularly. Yeah. We meet with CCR regularly. There's a programme board for 2030, and what we had discussed a number of things, including sharing costs for some of the technical due diligence. But what that didn't do was to take away the revenue implications for Bridgend.
You still wanted that £8 of flesh, basically.
Well, I'm afraid, especially the legal due diligence, only Bridgend can pay for that, and we can't share that information because that's privy to ourselves. It has to be privilege to us. So we could have looked to share some technical due diligence, and of course the financial due diligence comes right at the end, when the business case is in place, once you've finished designing the scheme itself. But I'm afraid we couldn't even part fund that due diligence because we have an incredibly difficult revenue situation in BCBC. 525,000. I don't have that in my directorate. It's not earmarked. I'm afraid we don't have the money to do that.
But the question was asked, the sort of discussions were had, let's say.
No, absolutely. Those discussions have been ongoing about the project for the last year and a half as we've been shaping it up. Whether we would contribute, what would we do, would it be the land, of course, because that's an important part of testing the concept for us. But unfortunately, we can't afford to take that forward. So the options really in this report for me, when I put the report together, was we either continue and you find the money, Cabinet, from somewhere, because it was clear Welsh Government didn't have the money, or CCR, or unfortunately at this stage we withdraw, but continue our discussions with Team Wales, Welsh Government, CCR and Marubeni Europower, and that is what we have continued to do.
And those are the two options in the report.
I think they were the only options,
and
Chair.
You recommended that we pull out, basically.
Well, unfortunately, that was the... And I will say, regrettably, because I've spent an awful lot of time and energy on this, and hydrogen will be a technology for the future. But at this stage, BCBC cannot be part of this project financially going forward. It's not, I'm afraid it's just not where we can be.
I'm conscious of time. It's 17, nearly 20 past 5, and I've got 8 further hands up. So we're gonna take a break at past. So I'm gonna call in next, Mr. Councillor Melanie Evans, please. Let's get in there.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Okay. I mean, obviously, after reading the report, I'm finding this debate quite interesting and very stimulating. There seems to be so many unknowns with this project, and as I understand it, we are being asked to provide a considerable large amount of resource at a time where funds and other resources are extremely tight. Costs seem to be increasing consistently in both labour and materials, which in itself is concerning. It was also suggested in the report that to continue as equity shareholders and undertake the necessary due diligence and project management was now estimated to be an additional £525,000. After listening to the debate, it would be very likely now that that £525,000 would or could increase. And that's just to continue as equity shareholders and undertake the necessary due diligence and project management. We are consistently having to review our services due to the lack of budget and resources, and I can appreciate that difficult and very unpopular decisions will and have to be made. However, the report also suggests that we are still unsure whether the solution designed by MEL would be effective, deliverable, and produce the benefits proposed. And I'd like to know, is that correct? And finally, with so many unknowns, spiralling costs, no assurance that the solution designed by MEL would be effective, deliverable, and produce the benefits proposed, I would question, do you believe that this project would still be viable? Because there was no guarantee, from my understanding, of which I would like clarification on, please, Janine, that the solution designed by MEL would be effective.
Okay. We've got to be careful here, Mel. We're creeping off the topic a little bit. Janine's going to answer. She's got her fingers poised there, but I'm struggling to find out where the financial question is there, to be honest. But Janine's going to take it anyway.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Evans. I'm not sure we can really call it spiralling costs. The costs when we commenced this project, the cost for due diligence are higher than anticipated, but then they're not spiralling. This is a £40 million project, and in essence, you would expect as a stakeholder to expend considerably more money than we have to date. Sometimes you can expend up to 5% of the cost of a project in due diligence. So I would not say the costs are spiralling. I have to admit to that. Will the project provide the benefits? Well, we hope it will, but we won't know because we can't complete the technical due diligence. Now, Welsh Government and CCR will complete that. What is clear though, and this is probably going off piste here, but the technology as it stands, electrolyzers are used in 16 other locations in the UK currently. There are 16 other hydrogen projects. But it is for CCR, Welsh Government, and Marubeni to complete that. Now, we're not saying it won't have the expected benefits. We're saying we can't complete our due diligence to be able to capture those benefits. So at this stage, they're unknown to us because we can't complete that work. So for instance, an example of it is which routes would be better with an electric refuse collection vehicle, or which route would be better with hydrogen. I would need to do a lot more due diligence to know, technical due diligence to know which one would be better. And I can't complete that, so I can't give you that answer. But that's not to say these projects don't work. They work across Europe, worldwide, but we're not getting into the debate about the merits of the project, of course, because that's not part of this calling. But I wondered if that would assist you. So thank you.
I'm not going to keep calling people back in this stage now, because we've got 7 hands up, Mel. So the director.
Yeah, that's fine, Chair. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Mel. Councillor Mike Kern, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My question is quite simple, and I think it's directed to Jadine. I see you going for this recommend option B. Could I have a bit more clarification on option B? Obviously, you've answered a lot of the questions from what I can gather when you answered some of the other councillors about your further talks with the Welsh Government and the other stakeholders. But can you give me some sort of update on how you're going along with option B, please? And do you think we could benefit from adopting option B, if you don't mind, Jadine? Thank you.
What is option B for some refresh your memories? That's the decision, isn't it? Well, that's
yeah, but you. Hang on, let me get the screen back up then.
Well, that's the end. As the cabinet, that's the end of it, Janine. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, the decision taken by Cabinet, Councillor Kern, is to withdraw from the project because of financial reasons.
I understand that.
As part of that, we have to give notice to withdraw from the Memorandum of Understanding. You wouldn't just leave that open. The Memorandum of Understanding is to work together with Marubeni, Welsh Government and CCR. And what we're saying at this stage is we won't be continuing that work. Because we cannot afford the due diligence to go forward. So basically the work has stopped. We have stopped doing any more due diligence. We've stopped the legal, we've stopped everything. So we've stopped the project. However, Welsh Government, CCR and Marubeni are still having their own discussions now. We don't go to meetings anymore, and they're looking at what shape the project could be in the future. But as far as BCBC is concerned, Councillor Kern, we have, pending the outcome of today, of course, the recommendation is to stop our involvement in the project.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, I must have missed. The way I read it is that you were going to still make some inquiries regarding further ways of getting involved. That's the way I read it. I obviously misread it.
No, that's absolutely fine. No, the intention is Team Wales, Welsh Government, CCR and Marubeni continue their discussions. I think that what you may have, dare I say, is that after the Cabinet, it was for us to have a discussion with those bodies to say, this is the Cabinet's decision, we have now formally withdrawn.
To inform them, basically.
So just to inform them.
Oh, okay. But we will still be talking though, I hope.
Well,
that's the way I read it.
I think we're still friends, but yeah, absolutely. But we won't be a formal part of this project anymore. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bledsoe, Freya Bledsoe, please.
Chair, I'm mindful that you were calling a recess, and I've got 3 questions. So I don't know if you want to call your recess first. No,
we'll do them. If it runs over, it's not.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Fine. Thank you. So, first of all, I just want to echo that the report that was put together by officers was superb. It was a very good report. And you know, we often see reports coming to our committee as well, and they're well written by our officers, and I want to pay tribute to that because I know these reports are difficult and time consuming to put together. On that matter as well of officer time and things like this, I just wondered, has any additional consideration been made for the costs that we're not seeing that are being declared in this? So we're being told that there's 149,000 on the due diligence and that the project management was 43 of that and there was 105, etc. I'm just wondering about the additional costs with our staffing time, because obviously we've discussed in our committees that we've got very short-staffed issues. We're short-staffed issues and things like that, retention and hiring. So I just wondered what the impact of that to date, financially and in reality for our staff had been. So that's one of my questions. Another question, which sort of leads in from this, is that we're told about the net zero, and this was obviously a big project that would have contributed quite significantly to us achieving net zero, and we've pulled our net zero forward to 2030. So it's a big ask. It really is a big ask. When we discussed net zero, I did ask, I think it was one of Janine's officers. I'm sorry, I would need to go back and look, about financial penalties if we didn't achieve net zero. And I'm just wondering if there's another hidden cost to us not doing this, with the penalty that might be incurred down the line that we're, obviously going to have.
We don't meet the 2030 deadline.
Yes,
yes. Is there a deadline? I'm not sure, but Jean will enlighten us.
Yes, and what the financial implications from that would be if we weren't to hit it, and this was to be a contributing factor.
As a result of this decision? Yeah, okay.
But finally as well, I'm really concerned to hear, and I mean, we've heard from Councillor Spanswick that the decision was made on financial grounds only. We've heard from the corporate director that the MTFS is stretched, and we know that there is a financial implication here. I'm really concerned that this project has been taken off the table because of financial concerns and our budget's been overstretched, and we can't afford it. It's that simple. We've been told that in this meeting. How many other projects are in the pipeline that are likely to be taken off the table?
I don't know if that's, I'm not sure. No, the legal officer shaking their head on that one. Sorry for you. It's outside the remit of this call-in, unfortunately.
Not a problem. That's
good
fine.
Try, Mike. It was good try. You got away with the second one, in fairness to you, but no, we got to keep it that narrow. Unfortunately, that narrow field, Okay, Janine, your name was mentioned there, so.
Yeah, of course, no problem at all. Yeah, officer time. What costs are we not seeing? Well, to be honest, Councillor Bledsoe, I suppose the one thing Mark always says is that we have corporate in our title, corporate directors, for a reason. So we, myself and Lindsay and Claire, as well as the heads of service, we work over all projects. So, for instance, I don't bill my time to this. I don't bill my time to my Stick Town Hall or the pavilion or the waste work. I'm here as a corporate director to oversee everything in my portfolio, as well as work with Cabinet, as well as work with all elected members, really. So I haven't billed any time to this because I work across all projects. We did have a project manager that worked with us 3 days a week for the 2 years on this project. And of course, we did employ legal specialists who assisted us on some of the legal due diligence. So we do have a decarbonisation programme board that this project got reported to. That's part of my decarb team that do wider. But with regard to what was billed, it was that full-time PM, or full-time, she wasn't full-time, she was 3 days a week, and the legal specialists. Yeah, we don't, with corporate work,
Itemise it, sorry.
We don't itemise it. I have responsibility for it all, I'm afraid.
Sorry, can I just pop back there? So just to clarify, we've got the costs for external individuals that have worked on this, so the project manager and the legal specialist, but we don't actually bill or know what the time implication is for BCBC officers or staff.
Yeah, we don't do salary. That's not how we divide salaries up. The private sector does time to project. That's not how we work in the Communities Directorate, with the exception of some of my corporate landlord and architects who bill their time to projects. We don't do that, I'm afraid. We have a small team for decarbonisation.
So how do you work the rest of the costs out then, Janine? If you said that we got the X amount for the legal and X amount for the...
Yeah, because it would be a project manager, and this is external. That 525 is for the external.
So all for external use.
All external use.
All internal use is just salary based, basically. And it doesn't...
BCBC salary, yeah.
It doesn't get, in a way, it doesn't get calculated in some ways then.
So it seems to be written off and not calculated as part of the cost.
I don't think we would say it was written off, because there is a team of energy specialists and decarbonisation. And when I say a team, it's a very small team. Yeah. But that is what their role is in this organisation, to work across a whole range of projects. That 525 was to continue legal work, to do technical due diligence, and all of the work that we've described is what we would need to do, yeah. And then the team internally do the internal work. And that's the way that most salaries in this organisation operate.
Okay.
With regard to our net zero carbon strategy, as I did say at the beginning of the report, of the session, 70% of our carbon savings in BCBC come from procurement, and that's very similar to a lot of other organisations. Mostly, it's strange to think that, isn't it? Mostly savings are from procurement, but it's true. So this would have played a part, this project, absolutely, but now we'll have to find other ways to decarbonise those buildings, for instance, and other ways to achieve the savings. But I would again say that we've done quite well so far in Bridgend. We've just reported back to Welsh Government, and we have to report back annually. So on the last financial year, our emissions are down by 38% from 66,000 kilograms to 66 million kilograms. I wish it was 1,000 to 40 million kilograms. You know, we've had a significant reduction in all of the work that's done. That's BCBC's.
In the report, though, it mentions cubic ton, isn't it, of carbon, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Welsh Government ask for different,
right, they would have
because kilograms make tons, don't they? Yeah. So they ask for different measures. But we report annually back to Welsh Government, a part of greenhouse gas emissions reporting, it's called. We have to report back, and as part of our climate emergency net zero, we are making impact on that. So hopefully that's answered that one.
Yes.
And then I won't answer the third point as advised.
No, please don't. No, you're not allowed.
Very quickly, Councillor Bledsoe, what you've done, yeah?
I'm content. Thank you very much.
It won't be the last.
Thank you.
Overrun by 4 minutes, not bad. I'm going to call a quick break now. It says 25 to, so 1:45. If we can return, please. We'll call a quick recess for a comfort break. Thank you very much.